welcome to my fourth installment of my how-to videos on weathering railcars. This time today I'm going to be showing you the techniques, and two techniques actually, my preferred methods of creating realistic rust spots on railcars. Basically I devised these two techniques from basically years of experience and kind of playing around with this to achieve these kind of looks. And one, I believe, is basically I created one myself, and this is a method I've showed you before in a previous video on how to model mud splatter. You may recall in that video I used the technique of using a stiff bristle brush, taking the bristles and then basically like spraying the sides with paint and then brushing it down to make it look like spilled mud, mud spray and all that. Well, basically the first rust spot technique is nothing more than this. It's a method of taking the paint and then taking your stiff bristle brush and the paint, getting enough on there, and taking some sort of solid object and then taking it at an angle and basically doing this, spraying it and splattering it on the sides of the car. It's very easy to do, and it requires very little technique. Basically, anyone can do this really. It's very simple. And then another technique I'm going to show you will be actually painting the rust spots on there. And basically this method, in this method anyways, you're using a finer tip brush and you're taking your paint and you're painting the spot directly on the model. So these are both very good techniques for this, and this is why I've chosen these two in particular for this subject. So right here we have my BNFE refrigerator car, and I was just using this as an example for the technique, because this is one of my better models that has more of it. Basically just about every one of my models has rust spots or something like that on it, but this is one of my prime examples, heavier examples you could say, of rust spots. So we'll go ahead and move it out of the way and actually take the real model we'll be working on, and we'll go ahead and set it up carefully. And this is a Trinity 3-bay covered hopper from Athearn. Really nice car. And these are great for trying this rust spot technique on, because these are really good cars to practice with. Also, this particular prototype gets really dirty. Rust spots are extremely common on covered hoppers, and basically just about every other covered hopper model, not just this one. So I'm going to try both techniques on this, and you'll be able to catch on to this really quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and start basically with the brush technique of actually painting the the rust spots directly on the car. So we're going to go ahead and take this thin tip brush, and you want to use a brush like this when you're doing that, because a bigger brush won't give you the better results. You want to have a fine tip brush like this, and basically you're going to want to use like an earth tone color, something that's going to give you a rust color. I prefer Anita's acrylic earth brown. It's a really good earth tone, and it can be lightened or mixed with any other color. Like for example, if you wanted a more rustier color, you could use like a light orange and kind of mix it in, or even create a background and then add the darker color behind it. That's another good technique, but I won't show that one today. That's just another idea behind this, but I'm just going to basically create a very basic rust spot. So I have my earth brown, and I'm going to go ahead, take my brush, dip it in just a little bit of paint, not too much. You don't want to saturate the brush. And you basically just pick a spot and dab the paint right on. just that simple. I'll zoom in on the area I'm working on, that way you get a better view of what I'm doing. And you basically just choose spots at random, or at least I do anyways. You even kind of can cluster them. Kind of vary your rust spots, and like kind of scatter them here and there. You don't want to focus too heavily on one area unless that car is like that in real life. If you're modeling a prototype, then that's different. Usually, if you're just freelancing it and you're just throwing spots on a factory car, basically you don't want to focus on one area at a time. You want to basically scatter the rust spots. You don't want a huge cluster, like a bunch of them here and then none on the other side, if you know what I mean. So you kind of just scatter them around here and there. That's usually what I do. Kind of build them up around each other. Just kind of dab your brush like this. Okay, so I'll go ahead and start with that. You can see the paint's on, and basically what you'll do next is, if I can find it, take a thin bristle brush, exactly like this, much finer tip, as you can see, and then basically you'll take a little bit of paint and then you'll streak it down like this. Very, very easy, and it actually does a pretty good job. It's really good. You can kind of see where we're kind of aiming for here. It's just a matter of going back and forth between them and creating that line where the, like say, water and such hits the rust spot when it's coming down the sides of the car, and it basically streaks the rust down, and that's what creates that. So I'm not just gonna do this with a few, but you can do this however much you want, whatever you're modeling. I'm just doing this as a very simple example. Alright, so that's basically it right there. That's the technique I use for rust spots. And just to add, here's another technique you can do with painting rust spots. You can actually take, which this is a really easy and really good looking technique as well, you can take a darker color and paint it on the rust spots themselves to kind of create the heavier corrosion area. So I got some flat black right here, as you can see. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the same brush we had earlier. I'm going to go hit the rust spots with little areas of black. You don't want to completely coat them, you just kind of want to get in the middle of it where the heavier corrosion is going to be. And kind of vary it, you kind of mix it up a bit. Kind of see what I'm doing here. And I'll add a little more. So notice the difference now. I'll zoom out just a little. You can kind of see what that did. It creates like a darker rust spot, but then you get the lighter color streaking down. So that's actually probably a little more realistic to do it that way. So that's the first technique, and that's a really good one if you do it that way. So we'll go ahead and move on to the second technique. So we'll go ahead and move on to this side of the car. This is the clean side. I'll use this for the second technique, which is basically spraying the sides with paint. And by this time you probably all know what I mean. So we'll go ahead and get into it. You take your same paint color, whatever paint color you're using. You take your brush, you dip it in, you get just a little off. You want to keep the brush pretty wet for this. And then you take a solid back object like this, a Lego. I use a spare Lego I have laying around. Something where it's going to create enough resistance when the bristles pass over that it'll basically spray the sides with it. So I'll zoom in just a little so you can see it better when I do this. So here's the splatter technique. And it's pretty heavy, but actually some cars do look like that. I've actually seen them like that before. But you get the idea. I'll zoom in real quick. Do you see the really nice texture that did? It's a really great technique. And you can actually do it as light or heavy as you like. So here's what you do next. You now switch to a very soft tip brush like this. Even a makeup brush will work for this. And then you basically take the brush and basically lightly, quickly brush it over the side of the car like this. Just like that. And see what that did? Oops, sorry. I get it zoomed back in. Focus. There we go. So you can see what that did. This is one of my favorite techniques, and you can see why. It looks so realistic. But basically, when you're doing that with this brush, you're just going very lightly. You're basically not even touching the car. You're just going really lightly and scratching that, because you don't want to put pressure where the brush is like this on the model. You don't want to do that. You want it very lightly, because if you have it like right up to the paint, it's just going to streak it down in like a bar, and that would look unrealistic. So basically, you just want to have the brush basically floating on the sides of the car, hitting the very tip, the very top of that paint blot, and then streaking some of the paint down. And you can see what that did. It's just amazing results, what you can get with that, and see how realistic the car looks now. And this is just only in one square of the car. To do it on the rest of the car, I just did it in this section just as an example. But when you're weathering your own car, you do it as heavy or as light as you like. But these are two very good techniques that basically, if you're looking to create rust spots, is perfect. And I've used this for years now, and it's never let me down. But I hope you liked this video, and I hope you were able to learn how to do this. And if you have any questions or anything like that you want to ask me about this, then feel free to leave a comment below. So I'll just go back over it once again. Yeah, get it. So there's the painted rust spots, and then there's the sprayed. Yep, sprayed rust spots. So those are my two techniques, basically, for rust spots.